Hello, hello, hello. Hi, my name is Linda Murray Bullard. They call me the business plug. And you haven't seen me in a week or so, right? Well, actually, a couple of weeks. But um, I'm here now, and I'd like to do this tribute celebrating Black History Month. So I want to tell you, I'm so excited to share this information with you and talk to you about Black History Month, my celebration of Black History Month through a story. But before I get to that, if you are interested in getting your business capital ready, like you're ready to get funding, you say, okay, I need to get funding for my business, then I am actually hosting a capital readiness workshop webinar on the 22nd of March. And the tickets are on sale now. So if that's something that appeals to you, then please look wherever you're watching this video. Go ahead and get your ticket because it's limited seating. I am only working with a few businesses at once. So if you are interested, go ahead and get your ticket as soon as possible, preferably today before the room gets crowded and you won't have a seat. The whole goal is to help businesses get capital ready so that you're positioning your business in order to get the funding that you say you need in order to operate your business. So, another thing I want to talk about, if you want to be a guest on the Business Plugs Mixer, then that link is here too. Pick your Sunday and we'll get together and talk about what you do and how you do it and what you would like to present to see if it's a good fit for you. If it's a great fit for you, I would love to have you on. We will start back next Sunday having guests. And so if you're interested in being on the Business Plugs Mixer, then by all means, please reach out to me and let's get you on the show. Now that I can have all that done, I am doing a presentation for celebrating Black History Month. You know that Black History Month is 365 for people who are Black, but for America, they have designated February to be Black History Month. And so, because that is what it is, today I am going to present to you my celebration of Black History Month in breaking barriers. So, I'm going to tell you a little story. So my father, who moved to Tennessee by way of Kenner, Louisiana, New Orleans, Macomb, Mississippi, and then Akron, Ohio, and he was on his way back down south, and he stopped in Chattanooga and met my mother. And so he came to this area um, very different guy. So he was a French Creole from, the New Orleans area in Kenner and had these hazel eyes and these pink lips. And he was about 5'11". And my father, my father was quite a character, but he was a very handsome young man in his youth. And so my mother passed on Christmas Day, 1968. My father stepped up and became the sole single parent for our family. But with that, he's always driven a truck. He's always drove a truck all my life. I can remember being a little girl and him being in an 18-wheeler. Like this is back in the 60s. And then in the 70s, and not long after that, he came off. My mother insisted he come off the road. So he came out of the 18-wheeler and started driving cement trucks. I mean, not cement trucks, dump trucks first. He was driving the big dump trucks for this company called T.T. Wilson. So he did that for a while, and then he changed and he went to driving cement trucks eventually. So he's always been a truck driver. The straight shift from back in the day, he's always had vehicles. Majority of his vehicles were straight shift until automatics got popular. But I can remember him shifting gears in the cars and things. And so my father, after my mother passed, her dying wish was for him to keep us together. And so he did that the best he knew how to do. At first, he sent us to go live with his cousins. There were 6 of us. So my mom had 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls before he met her. And then together they had my brother Ed and me. And so 6 kids, right? But my oldest brother father came and got him. And that's a whole different story for a different day. But my father had 5 of us that he was trying to corral, had never raised kids. but he wanted to be. He's always been a very inspirational, my number one cheerleader, always teaching me new things, and always like he wanted me to be self-sufficient so I can handle tools pretty well. In fact, my first real job was working at a hand assembly line because my dad showed me how to make work tools, right? So yeah, so that's the background. So my dad became the only black driver in the cement truck in the 70s for this company. And I used to wonder why he was always the only black driver, right? Because I'm thinking, surely other people knew how to drive. All his friends were finishers. They were what was called concrete finishers. And so their jobs was after the concrete was poured from the truck, they would go out and they would um, smooth it out and form it and make it to sidewalks or driveways or whatever the foundation was. And so I just used to wonder, my dad's always in the truck. And then later I found out that the Affirmative Action um, Act was why he had a job. So he was the only black driver. They had about 12 drivers, I think, at that time. And he was the only black driver. And I remember him giving stories about places where he couldn't go. Like he would say, I went to Ducktown, Tennessee, and they asked the company not to send him back anymore. Not that he did anything wrong, it was just because of his color, he was not welcome there. And so, you hear about sunset cities and all kind of different things that were popular in that area. He never tried to explain racism to me. He never, my brother and I, my brother that was my age, Ed and I, he never tried to talk to us about civil rights. So we grew up in the civil rights era, but we were not privy to what that meant to us. And I tell people, and they look at me kind of strange, but I tell them, in my household as a child, we cried more for the Kennedys when they were killed than we did for Dr. King, because we had no reference of what he was doing, the marches and all those things. Those things we were kind of shielded from. And so grew up very different from people who were raised in the civil rights era. The people who kept coming to my house to pick my dad up, or to, they used to drink at the kitchen table and all that, they were white people. It was my mom's cousin, and then these white men, but they never treated us differently, never talked to us any kind of way. And so I grew up very different, not having the point of view that a lot of people my age have because of my dad. Well, in the workforce back in those days, there were certain jobs that you didn't find people in. And driving the truck was one of them. I didn't realize that. But yeah, being the driver of a truck. But like I said, my dad came from down south. He came from Louisiana. And so him driving the truck was just what he did before he came here, before he came up where we were. And so the majority of the guys, like I said, his friends, the people that hung out in the little houses that they used to go and have beers or whatever, they were all finishers. He knew them as concrete finishers, and they were laborers. And that was the job that majority of them had. All of them had, pretty much. They were all in construction some kind of way, but for the most part, many of them were concrete finishers. And so there were limited opportunities as far as truck driving for like the cement truck. And then you find out, even though he was considered a good job, that was a good job, that his wages were not comparable to his coworkers. But the challenges that they had, being the only guy, is there were places he couldn't go. There were not being the only black driver, there were places he couldn't go. There were things he couldn't do. And he used to tell me that he was used to it because in his childhood, he used to play the alto saxophone, and my favorite instrument. And he used to talk about, like, when he was in New Orleans as a child, or, a young man, that he played in a band, and they used to have to play outside the places on a wagon. And he talks about they weren't allowed to come inside, they weren't allowed to eat in different restaurants and those kind of things. And so him and his band used to play on a wagon outside of the place that they were playing for, because they weren't allowed inside. But you think about overcoming all those segregation obstacles in the work environment and in, the entertainment environment. There are many, many, many performers talk about how they were treated very differently when they went different places. And he used to bring those stories home, but not to the point that it was something that we harped on. He would just say, we just did what we came to do. They paid us. We did what we did. We made the music. And the same thing about um, driving the truck. He never acted like it really bothered him. They really were very nice to him. My dad, my dad had his own demons he was facing, and they would come and get him and make sure that he was in the truck. And I'm sure there were plenty of times they probably could have fired him and just said, you go on, we'll find somebody else. But they would come and get him and put him in the truck and get him back in the road, and he stayed there and actually retired from there after 12 years. So I just, for Black History Month, I know sometimes our stories don't get told because we don't talk about them. And for Black History Month, my celebration of Black history is he was my number one cheerleader. He always taught me, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. And in our families, we have these stories of our relatives who have done some remarkable things and were the one, right? Were the one that did, driving a truck or served something or invented some creation or all these magnificent things that they did. And it was a part of their daily lives that we, being the family, didn't really take it to heart, that what they were doing was kind of historical. Like him for that company, yeah, they never hired anybody Black after he retired. So, I think they tried one, did a wrong hire. They hired for color instead of for ability. And I think they hired for color instead of ability. And I don't think that turned out well. And after that one didn't turn out well, I don't think they hired anybody else in that position that was of color. And so you think about that, but I know that, like I said, there are many, 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 many stories, and I invite you to put your family story. Who in your family has a story, similar to my father's? Who in your family? Because we all have these people who little known secrets, right? And then later I found out that my neighbor, who we grew up together, that he told me like recently that the reason he drove a cement truck is because he said, I used to see your dad come home in that truck. And I thought, when I grow up, that's what I'm going to do with my life. I want to drive one of those trucks. And he did. As a grown man, he drove a truck. So you never know what impact your life has on other people that are watching you. And it's just like my dad never knew that young man was watching him. But the fact that young guy decided to emulate what he saw is remarkable. And it was heartwarming to hear it. So overcoming prejudice, overcoming and making a way for equality and being intentional. I am grateful for the company that hired him. I'm grateful for the experience that his coworkers gave us in including us. And, when they were kind to us all the time and doing things to help our family move along, and taking my father on fishing trips and open sea fishing, deep sea fishing, and all the different experiences my dad had that he wouldn't have had any other way. I just really, really appreciate his coworkers for being who they were to him. And I appreciate my dad for being my cheerleader and being the example, because after he passed in corporate America, there were many, 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 many rooms that I sat in where I was the only person there of color. And because he talked, I watched him and I watched how he carried himself. I was able to carry myself. I was on that position for 26 years, but I sat in meetings with the CEO and all the managing staff of this big insurance corporation. And I would not have had that chance, or would have been afraid or felt some other kind of way, had I not had the daddy that I had. So his legacy actually lived on. And I am his legacy, still breaking barriers. My son is doing the same. My sons, I have 3 sons, they're doing the same. And even my granddaughter, she's doing the same. So that's what we're doing. So this is my celebration of Black History Month is to tell you a little bit about my dad. And I would love, love, love to hear about your story, your Black history story of your family member. Because if we don't tell our stories, they don't get out there and they get forgotten. And I never want my dad to be forgotten. The Murray in my name is always, always, always me saluting my father for the sacrifices he made in order to make me become who I am today. So that's what I'm talking about today. And if you are listening to this and you followed it this long, thank you. Thank you. I would love to hear your story. And so I have entered my email address and my website address. But I would love to have a conversation with you about your Black history story. How has someone in your family impacted other people and left a lifelong legacy? My name is Linda Murray Bullard. I am here on Sundays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And I thank you for joining me today. And I hope to see you next week when I have guests again. But thank you, thank you, thank you for your time. Have a great week, everybody. And I'll see you next Sunday here on the Business Plugs Mixer. Have a great week. Bye-bye.